monteverdi-beatus-vir, qui timet Dominum. Blessed is the man who fears the Lord. These are the opening lines of Psalm 112 from Holy Scripture. The 17th century was host to the unique developments, reforms, and counter-reforms of sacred church music. The era was one of peculiar relationships between modern developments of style, instrumentation, secular themes, and the Tridentine reforms. This environment of post-Trent and soon a post-Renaissance Italy was sometimes difficult, if not exciting, period for composers. Consider the following quotations from the Council of Trent. All things should indeed be so ordered that the masses, whether they be celebrated with or without singing, may reach tranquilly into the ears and hearts of those who hear them, when everything is executed clearly and at the right speed. In the case of those masses which are celebrated with singing and with organ, let nothing profane be intermingled, but only hymns and divine praises. The whole plan of singing in musical modes should be constituted not to give empty pleasure to the ear, but in such a way that the words may be clearly understood by all, and thus the hearts of listeners be drawn to the desire of heavenly harmonies, and the contemplation of the joys of the blessed. They shall also banish from church all music that contains, whether in the singing or in the organ playing, things that are lascivious or impure. In choirs instituted for psalmody, the name of God should be praised reverently, distinctly, and with devotion in hymns and chants. The Roman Church had noticed how in Germany popular music and styles were used by the evangelical Protestants in the Mass. In an attempt to curb any such movements in Catholic worship, the Church had to address music specifically. This led to a specific style of church music for the next decades, characterized by the stepwise motion and hollow chords of Rome's poster boy, Palestrina. However, not even an ecumenical council can stop musicians from pursuing the one thing that drives their dreams and ambitions, and that is originality. Unfortunately for the conservatives of the Roman Church, Palestrina's style, while undeniably beautiful, could only be repeated so many times before the composers got bored. When church composers got bored, they tended to push the rules and add a dissonant non-chord tone here or there, or even borrow from secular styles. This is the religious backdrop of Monteverdi's world. Claudio Monteverdi was an Italian composer of the late Renaissance and early Baroque periods. Music's periods are usually measured slightly different from the other arts, and like the other arts are slightly arbitrary classifications. Musical periods have composers that cannot quite fit into one era or the other, but instead bridge the gap. Monteverdi bridged the Renaissance and Baroque eras in music. Claudio Monteverdi was born in 1567 in the Lombard town of Cremona, a place now famous for its music and stringed instrument craftsmen. Monteverdi's music pushed the genre limits at the time. He was a master at crafting beautifully written madrigals, but his chief achievement is his modern expression of opera in Il Orfeo. Here, we also see a clear picture of pagan mythology's influence on the art of Catholic Europe, something which would be a theme among much of Monteverdi's work. He also developed religious music, his early master collection being his Vespro della Beata Vergine, which even used some of the music from Il Orfeo. Monteverdi would serve as the maestro di cappella of St. Mark's Basilica in Venice for many years. This was a perfect setting for his work, but even here, he would not write purely religious work for 3 decades until our piece of note. We, occupied in looking after the decorum and reverence of the churches destined for divine praises and prayer, and of the oratories of our gracious city, from which examples of good works go forth into all parts of the world, are compelled, by the desire of pious solicitude, to keep far away from them anything ostentatious, and especially choirs of music and symphonies in which anything indecorous or divorced from ecclesiastical rite is mixed in, with offence of the divine majesty, scandal of the faithful, and impediment of the elevation of hearts and devotion to things that are above. Thus wrote Pope Alexander VII in his Apostolic Constitution, Piae Solicitudinis, of the 23rd of April, 1657. Another example of the religious background that always was present among the composers of this time period, and the struggle of the Catholic Church to grasp the secular music changes and skillfully implement it into the religious worship at the time. Monteverdi was used to pushing the limits of his work, but there, as always, were debates over the moral qualities of opera and other secular work. Monteverdi's usage of pagan imagery and political messaging would have added substance to these ever-present debates. However, Monteverdi was an experienced and very gifted composer who had faithfully served the chief church of all northeastern Italy for many years. Even with controversy, Il Orfeo and his other operatic works were major successes. Unlike the Red Priest Antonio Vivaldi of the next musical generation, Monteverdi would not receive any ecclesiastical or political trouble or regulation in his long career. Close to the end of his life, in 1640, Monteverdi published his first religious collection in decades, Selva morale e spirituale. I chose beatus-vir as the keystone of this essay because of its distinctive qualities, representing Monteverdi, especially the religious Monteverdi, as a whole. The string opening is modern in style and quality, and returns both as melody and chorus accompaniment throughout the piece. Every now and then, a solo violin part will add an ornamental motif in between the vocal lines. The piece both switches between 3/4 and 4/4 meters, and also between major and minor modes. This is done in a concrete and obvious way, but smoothly done, matching the text, and implemented in logical places. The work overall seamlessly combines the secular madrigal style with a beautiful religious theme. The influence of Palestrina is not entirely ridden from this music, but the influence of the coming Baroque period and its secular work can also be clearly seen. This piece is a fitting representation of both the synthesis of secular music and religious music that closes the curtain on the Catholic Church's musical debates, at least for now. It is also a fitting closing piece of music for the Renaissance, an invitation to the Baroque masterpieces of Vivaldi, Bach, and Handel. Thus finishes our discussion on Monteverdi's Beatus-vir. his rendition of Psalm 112, and I hope you gain a better understanding of the unique bridge between the Renaissance and the Baroque eras of music.